Hailshi is Gwynny Core. Yn gydol sias ys mi'n law mahan hyn ys a sylwa fan Ceilan. Agos ffwr yn omdol yn Áras, fircyn ffwrsio yr oedd gyda Áras yn Uachtaráin. Agos mwyd kilúra la eila ar liv neu fodryd. Excellencies, Vice Admiral Mellis, and indeed Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Charles Brown, Ambassador of Italy, Ambassador of Greece. Dear friends, thank you for being with us and sharing this day with us. On a day like today, St. Patrick's Day, it has been our habit here at Áras and Uachtaráin, when the formal occasions externally are over, that we use the home of the President of Ireland to acknowledge those who have made a special contribution to Ireland in some way. And this year I'm particularly delighted as Uachtaráin here and as Supreme Commander of the Defence Forces to welcome as our special guests on our National Day members of the Naval Service and the Defence Forces personnel who served on boards the Etna, the Naval and Samuel Beckett during last year's rescue mission in the Mediterranean. I want to say, because it is my practice even during 2016, to try and stress the importance of our own language. So if you'll excuse me, I say this in Irish. It's a coivri, mar a good merlo, the project in Áras and Uachtaráin. Taught me the ahantas, the groups, the agric, the totorish, the curricleakers and point on a head. Now, on Fuckelshin Each, which is a great achievement, I suppose within here's translation, is precisely what you have done. There are no times during these, in the busy times during the last year, and all of during the events unfolded. I can only tell you as I travel around Ireland, the many, many expressions of admiration and pride that we had people who are doing such a wonderful, wonderful work on behalf of humanity in the Mediterranean. So this reception this afternoon, we decided, would specially honour all of you, men and women of all ranks and all duties and all different skills that you applied. All of our lives are limited, but what better way could you spend your lives than what you did? And I think you had the admiration not just of Irish people, but of all genuine Europeans and responsible global citizens in the acts that you did. I'm delighted that the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps was here. I have spoken to him before about how Pope Francis was moved about were we to turn the Mediterranean into a grave. I think that, therefore, last year when the decision was taken by the Irish government, which I was so pleased to undertake an overseas mission, and that between May and November they would send Irish vessels on humanitarian search and rescue missions in the Mediterranean directly. It's now recorded insofar as the best we can about the number of people who were actually plucked from the sea. 8,592 men, women and children in the most difficult circumstances. But I know, and it is something that is even harder. I remember when I was during the famine in Somalia, when you in fact encountered dead bodies, and you recovered 39 bodies. And I think that, in a way, what you have had to deal with would strain, but it didn't, because you approached even that terrible task with great professionalism, as well as the compassion that you showed, and that everyone could see who saw what you were doing. So your courage and your dedication and great professionalism in the line of duty is both impressive and inspiring. And it is such an inspiration in particular for our young people. I know that you've already been honoured by being given the People of the Year Award, which was a great tribute to Óglaigh Maheran for the remarkable efforts that you made at this critical time. So I still congratulate you on that recognition you've given. I think you're, along with your 3 commanding officers, A total of 184 crew members served on this important mission. And Sabine and I are absolutely delighted that so many of you were able to join us today. I think I'm delighted in particular that Vice Admiral Mellett is with us. I very much value the relationship that I have with the armed forces, and only just on International Women's Day, I think that Vice Admiral Mellett, as Chief of the Staff of the Defence Forces, participated in the event that I organised to mark the UN He for She campaign, which is a global campaign which men and women both undertake to make practical commitments to advance the equality of women, the rights of women. And that event, when the Chief of Staff spoke eloquently about the role of the Defence Forces in protecting human rights, how important it was for building the foundations of peace on which civil society, human rights and equality can flourish. Derechos humanos or human rights, Carta Andina, these are so important in defining the work of our defence forces overseas. So we remember today, in a special way, the members of the defence forces who, as I speak, are working to protect life, to secure communities, and to build and maintain peace in so many parts of the globe. The Lebanon, Golan Heights, where I had visited them, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Israel, Kosovo, Mali, North Africa. I think that this year, and particularly I think of course this month when we're marking a significant founding event of 1916, and when we are recalling the brave women and men who fought for a free, just and independent Ireland, I think if I was to project an opinion onto them, they would be very proud of that work of global responsibility to which I've just referred. And it is a time, I think, when we will all now reflect, as we go through the different events, on the inspiring words of our proclamation of independence for Odra na Saoirse, and recall for ourselves the ideals and values that are articulated in that proclamation as visionary statements, as exercises in moral imagination. They are still inspiring. If we think of the idealism that inspired those people to want to build a freedom and an independence that they themselves would not enjoy, we are challenged to continue the work of crafting together a republic that will take its place along with other independent peoples and states, of something we can be proud. But proud because it is thinking long term, that has the courage to deal with issues like climate change, issues of global poverty, issues of fair trade. And St. Patrick's Day is a good day to ask ourselves these challenging questions. Over the past century, one of the great achievements of an independent Ireland was indeed a foreign policy based on principles of peace building, support for multilateralism and global justice. And when these became the mark of those times in Ireland's highest reputation for foreign policy, it was a challenging time. But our present time is more challenging. It is hard to find the energy that is there in diplomacy, that has produced the conflicts, that have had consequences to which you have responded by having to pluck people from the sea. It's a disappointing time, intellectually. It's a disappointing time in international relations. It's a very disappointing time, even in international diplomacy. But Ireland, at its best, when it spoke about nuclear disarmament, peace building, multilateralism, overseas aid, global justice, is a time we must recover again. And I think that, therefore, I want to wish our diplomats and those who work in our aid programme abroad, and I have visited them as they work among Custom Winter and Down, the poorest people of the world, and our defence forces stepping into the bridge to sustain and build peace. So it's in that spirit, particularly appropriate on a day like today, that we are honouring the women and men of the Naval Service, who exemplify the finest qualities of our Irish people. I'll speak straightforwardly about it. Sabine and I were enormously impressed by the strength and how impressive in every dimension, the people we have just welcomed to Áras and Uachtaráin. Our world, as I have said, is facing the greatest challenges at the present time. I, who speak of people of the age of the people who are in the forces, is that may you live in the generation that will approach in a sustained way the issues of global hunger and poverty. My generation and one before it has failed in that area. I was a university teacher. I taught subjects that were in the social sciences. I have seen them fail to be able to engage with the issues that I speak of, be it in relation to child death from nutrition, be it in relation to issues of conflict, be it in relation to the recrafting of important subjects like political economy, be it in any of these, death, the emergence in the world of a whole unaccountable sphere where the peoples of the world, men, women and children, are subjected to the vagaries of something that is unaccountable and described somehow as natural or inevitable. All of this is a world that I hope that you will live to see changed. I think as well in relation to, as I speak of these issues, aware as I am of 60 million people forced to be displaced on our planet at this present time, and the consequences of that tragedy that we're witnessing, the displacement of people across the Middle East, North Africa and beyond, the mass movement of refugees towards Europe by land and across the Mediterranean and the Aegean seas. So pleased that we have represented here the representative of the people and the government of Greece. I think that these states, Greece, Malta, the ambassador of Italy is with us here, they are receiving the people for which we all have a responsibility. And of course, they're not getting the assistance that they should get. I want to recognise here as well the work being carried out by those Irish aid agencies in the most difficult circumstances, both within and on the borders of Syria, in the region, and in Europe where refugees are arriving. And there is very inspiring work done by people, men whom I know, Irish volunteers, ordinary Irish citizens and NGOs who are making a direct contribution to supporting those refugees who are affected by these events in Calais, in Lesbos, in Kos and elsewhere. They bring we send out, I think that all of us send out our deepest appreciation to them. Because what we're living through is a global crisis which has at its heart the fundamental and critical issue of human rights and a recognition of the common humanity that connects us all as global citizens. And it is a crisis that requires political and moral leadership, a leadership that will be courageous and far-sighted and grounded in the founding values of human rights, accepting our moral and ethical obligations in an interdependent world. As I say that, I realise this isn't an obligation that is imposed upon us. It is simply the way we should live with happiness and love and live better and healthier and in every way. It is a positive set of values that needs to be put in place. So the immediate humanitarian response in which our vessels have been engaged is an essential element of what is needed. Often I've said to myself when I have met heads of state and others, and people speak of what we must do in the future, but what of today? And what of the children today? And what of the women today? What of those who have paid traffickers today? You have helped them. And therefore, your seizing, if you like, of the immediate moment is something that will enable all of us to bring forward our own responsibilities. We must recognise that the greatest number of displaced persons is a meeting today in Europe. But I wonder, do people be able to envisage what it is like in Jordan, or in Lebanon, or in Turkey, just over the border from the areas of greatest conflict? We are not exhibiting solidarity. We are not vindicating rights at global or at regional level. And I am deeply concerned at what is happening within the European Union. Ultimately, we must recognise that the only moral and practical response to mass displacement of the type we're witnessing on the margins of Europe is the building of peace, effective and indefatigable diplomacy in support of that to which we have subscribed our name, be it in relation to ending global hunger through the Sustainable Development Goals, be it through climate change, where we're not asked to produce empty words, but to take the actions for the future generations. I think we need political courage to engage with the long term, and the legacy too of militaristic failures and adventurism. And thus, in those circumstances, I thank you for that. Why do I say I am concerned for Europe? Because the response, I think, that is needed is a response that is mandated by the founding documents of Europe, including the European Convention of Human Rights. That is the response which is demanded by our own European history of conflict and protection, of our response to not just arising here in Ireland, but to 2 world wars. And Europe is facing a defining moral test, and that test cannot be met by turning our backs on those who seek our assistance. That Europe of ideals, that peaceful world to which we had aspirations, is fading from us in the absence of moral, intellectual, political, and above all, inclusive economic theory and work and policies. The consequences, if we are to fail this test, in which we are engaged now, will be catastrophic, and not only for those who have a right to our protection, but for the very idea of Europe itself and its credibility as a force for law, humanity, inclusion, as a force for good in the world. And I think its reputation, if we fail, will be in tatters, and rightly so, if we resort to narrow self-interest or jingoistic statements instead of moral concern. All this can be witnessed by the overwhelming, by the way. I believe that people want that alternative of moral engagement. Everywhere I went in Ireland, there was an overwhelming and deserved support, respect for your work in our seas, and praise for those who took the decision in government and elsewhere to enable you, to send you to do what you're doing in your most difficult task. I want to say then that the humanitarian role you have given witness to in the Mediterranean Sea, I do realise, as you go home this evening at 9 o'clock or whenever it is, that the other valuable work that you do in patrolling the seas around our island in all weathers, helping to save lives, prevent criminal smuggling operations, protecting our fishing stocks. I'm very, very grateful for that, and I acknowledge it. And my wish too is that those developing countries whose resources on the sea are being pillaged from them will be able in time to benefit from the experience that you will be able to bring them and advise them in protecting their livelihoods. Tom Creek, con Creek Carlish made their own Gwyn got Grahacus Bam Barrel, or Tovak the Tower Shulaki, Dun Tau Key. Agus Tikum Gama ur Clan Fain, Iansan ur Winter, Dar Noe Rudif, Vider Nervishakas, on Contour the Bishop, a Jela Lesh Bjognak er Fossileu. I want to thank all of your families and all of those that are dear to you, and who might have been distressed at times, as you undertake, as those who founded our state, thought beyond themselves. You have thought beyond ourselves. I want to thank all those of you who have helped Sabina and I organise this event, and particularly those now who you have heard my words, one of the things that knows no borders is culture and music. May I thank the UCD, my own staff, for their incredible work yet again in enabling an event like this to take place. I want to thank the UCD Scholars Choir, the Shandrum Kelly Band, Ceola Mara, and young folks for enabling us to acknowledge and also to face new challenges, and then most important of all, to be able to celebrate our Patron's Day, Lála Pádraig, in a celebratory way. So let us send our music and let us send our enjoyment, but also our commitment to our vulnerable planet out on this important St. Patrick's Day 2016. Gurmina Mark.